If you're a CEO, if you're a health professional running your own business, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a coach running a business, and you feel like you're doing everything and you're looking to hire an assistant, I'm going to walk you through exactly how I work with my executive assistant as the CEO of our company, HealthPreneur. All right, guys, Uriel King here. In case you don't know me, I'm the CEO and founder of HealthPreneur. We're the world's largest coaching and training company helping health professionals build scalable coaching businesses that transform more lives. And if you're watching this, you're thinking to yourself, I need to get some stuff off my plate. I need a little bit of support in my ecosystem. I can't keep doing everything. I can't keep looking at my email all day long on my calendar and like taking it all in. Well, that's why you're here and that's why you're considering an assistant. So what I'm going to walk you through in this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I work with my executive assistant. I'm going to show you some documents we use. I'm going to literally walk you through behind the scenes and show you stuff that you've probably never seen a CEO divulge before as it pertains to this. So I'm going to show you the playbook we use, our daily sync, how we communicate, all the way down to how she books travel for me and the OCD-ness I have with respect to how travel is booked. And I'll show you some of the specifics to get you thinking around how you can have someone literally run your life. And that's essentially what Becca, who's my assistant, does, is she literally runs a lot of the aspects of my life that I no longer have the desire or energy to attend to. So first and foremost, let's talk about why even bother hiring an assistant? Now, I just want to clarify the difference between an assistant. When I talk about an assistant, what I'm talking about specifically in this video is an executive assistant, not an admin assistant. Now, if you're thinking of the pecking order of hiring, an admin assistant would usually be first, and this is someone who's going to be a lower pay scale, and they're going to take a lot of the small stuff off your plate. A lot of the admin stuff. Typically when we're working with our clients and they're hitting that 25 to 30K per month revenue level, at least in a coaching business, they start to hit some bottlenecks and some constraints around their time. And so the first hire we recommend they make is an admin assistant, potentially a VA, or a virtual assistant. And a lot of the stuff they're going to get off their plate is going to be those small, menial $5, $10, $15 an hour tasks that are just eating up your time that don't add a tremendous amount of value to your company. Because you can't build $1 million business doing $10 an hour tasks. So an admin assistant, I want you to, like, as a very simple exercise as you go through this video, is to think about making a list. Take out a sheet of paper and make a list right down the middle. You have a straight line. On the left-hand side, you write down the few things that bring you the most joy and value to your business. So in my case, it's going to be stuff like this, shooting videos like this. It's going to be communication, being on podcasts, speaking, coaching our clients, creating content, as I just mentioned, motivating and leading our team. That's about it though. Like, other than that, like, I don't really need to do much in the business. And so for you, think about what are the core four, think of them like that, the core four activities that light you up, that bring you the most joy, that add the most value to your business and those you serve. And then on the other side of the page, write down everything else you're doing. Everything. I'm talking about sending emails, setting up calendar invites, down to the granular level of everything you do on a daily basis. And all of a sudden, you'll have a very, very big list. And the goal is that a lot of that stuff can be given to an admin assistant as a starting point, okay? Now, an executive assistant, consider like a higher level assistant, someone who is going to, again, really assist you, the executive, to help run your life, not just take on the admin tasks. So why would you hire an EA? Now, first and foremost, an EA, an executive assistant, is going to be on a higher pay scale than an admin assistant, right? You're typically looking more than $100,000 a year in salary. But listen, what they will buy you back in terms of time, energy, and focus is immeasurable. And that's the most important reason why, if you're generating in your business at least $250,000 a year or more, you want to consider, should I consider bringing on an EA? And again, if you're doing 250, you're not going to pay 100,000, obviously. But if you're getting closer to those seven figures, I want you to start thinking about how can I bring someone in to literally be my right hand, to take on a lot of stuff that I don't want to do, because the benefits are immeasurable. Now, obviously, if you're a little bit lower in revenue, right? So if you're in the low six figures, you're going to probably start with an admin assistant, but the processes I'm walking you through here are still valuable for that type of person as well, okay? So what does my executive assistant do? Really simply, she protects my time. She's the gatekeeper to me. I am naturally a pretty introverted person, and so I protect my time and energy pretty vigorously. So as a starting point, your EA will most likely be taking care of your email and your calendar right off the bat, okay? So like essentially think of it like this. I don't check my email. I don't have ownership of my own calendar. Okay, so like as an example, last night I was at soccer with my wife and our little one, who's 5. We've got 4 boys. And my wife was sending me the updated soccer schedule for the summer for our 4 kids. And I just said, hey, can you just send that to me? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to send that to Becca. And Becca now puts all of those schedules and games into my calendar. I'm not the one doing that. So I'm literally just going from my wife's phone to my phone, boom, off to my EA. And then she takes care of all of that in terms of the dates, the times, where it's happening. Because imagine me trying to do all that stuff, man, that would take me hours. And as the CEO of the company, that's not the most useful thing for me to be doing. So what I want to share with you as a starting point, actually, when I was, kind of thinking through, like, what does this individual have to do? So when I first hired my EA several years ago, I put together a playbook, and you can see this right here. And this playbook literally goes down from the task cadence to our meeting schedule to how to process my calendar. And whatever role you're hired for in your company, you definitely want to have a playbook. Like we have a playbook for sales, we have a playbook for marketing, we have a playbook for client success, we have a whole company playbook. So you want to have a playbook for this role. Now, when you're building out a playbook is think of it as a book that has a compilation of SOPs, or standard operating procedures, or processes. And this is basically the table of contents. So if I want to click on one of these, it's going to take me to, where that is. And you're going to see here, like on a weekly basis, this individual, this EA of yours or mine, would audit my calendar for the next 6 weeks ahead, reviewing my weekly commitments for the week ahead, reviewing the current quarter's flight plan to make sure that I'm focused on the most important things. Reviewing my weekly commitments, mine, not just hers, but mine, on a weekly basis ahead of time, making sure everything's, I have my focus where it needs to be. Filtering any potential new hires and moving prospects through our perfect talent pipeline. Reviewing the travel schedule, updating accordingly. So this is on a weekly basis. She also has things to do on a daily basis, which in my case are a little bit more specific to stuff that I'm doing. So your EA is going to, what this person is going to do is going to vary depending on what you need them to do. So at a high level, they're going to protect your time, which means information coming in, they should be filtering it. When I say information, I mean inbound. It's going to be messages, it's going to be emails. Ideally, they own your inbox. And then secondarily, they own your calendar. So they are going to be a buffer around how you use your time and how people have access to you. Above and beyond that, this person will do whatever you need them to do if it's within their scope of, let's call it expertise or proficiency. So for instance, in my case, Becca does all my personal stuff, right? So we're building a house in Mexico. She's organizing a lot of stuff with the house manager trying to hire, the chef, all that kind of stuff. Buying a car down there, she's doing all that stuff. Winter car storage, changing of tires, she does all of that stuff. Like basically anything I don't want to do, which is pretty much everything, she's taking on. Travel. I'll show you the travel documents in a second. Initially, actually, as she was taking on the personal stuff and that kind of like she got a good handle on that, there were other needs in the business that she was starting to take on. So she actually moved into more of a content management role. So she was learning about SEO, project management, content syndication. So before we brought on a little bit more robustness in that department, she was filling in the gap. So she learned a lot of different skills in various aspects of the business based on where I needed a bit of support, based on, where we may have been lacking a little bit of resource. So it really depends on what you need support with. Like if you have an e-commerce business, like you might need some support with supply chain stuff, and maybe your EA supports with some of that. If you have a coaching business, maybe your EA is supporting you with billing, or like, it depends, right? It really depends on where you need support. But the thing is for you to get clarity on what that stuff looks like, which is why I recommend you start off with that very simple exercise I mentioned at the beginning, is like sheet of paper, line down the middle. What are your core 4, the most important things that drive you, that drive the business, and then list everything else out. And then this person starts to take on a good amount of that stuff. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do everything in your business, but there's a good amount of it that they could do to really support you. So that's what my EA does. When should you hire one? Again, as I mentioned, I would say, in the neighborhood of about 25 to 30K a month is when you definitely should have an assistant. So like by that point, for sure, usually starting off with an admin assistant. As your revenue grows toward the 7 figures, you're most likely looking at an executive assistant, in the 6-figure range, salary-wise, 100K plus, and someone who you trust implicitly. And I'll get into what you want to be looking for in just a couple moments, because that's going to be very, very important. So I'll get to that in a second, but we talked about just a couple things here in terms of a playbook. And I want to mention a couple things you want to have in place as you're bringing someone on or as you're considering hiring an executive assistant. So one is you want to have a playbook like this. And that playbook is I'll give you some broad categories here. So what does communication look like? What does communication look like? So the daily sync, right? So for instance, we have a whole process here. So for instance, for us, we met every single day for the first 45 days in the role. After that, 45 to 90 days, we moved to 3 times a week. And now we're currently at 2 times a week because we don't need to meet daily. 3 times is a bit too much. And a lot of our communication is asynchronous via Slack. I'll send her voice memos or, stuff like that. And that's our communication rhythm right now. But generally, especially with someone who doesn't work very closely with you, you want to make sure they understand the ins and outs of who you are and how you operate. And that means you got to connect with them every single day for at least the first 30 to 45 days. They need to know everything about you. So that's the first thing, is having a good communication cadence. The other thing here is we have a daily sync meeting agenda, and I'll show you what that looks like here. So every morning, even if we don't meet, I'm getting a report or a daily report that looks like this. And it's a review of the calendar, closing the loop on projects, stuff she's got to review, projects she's working on, and any kind of questions or reminders. Hey, can you send me the why statements when you get a chance? So we can send this to the bookkeepers for P&L, stuff like that. If it's a more charged day in terms of my meetings, all of that stuff will be listed out here. Any specific stuff that I need to be aware of is here. And obviously, if there's stuff I need her to take on that's not in here, that will be brought up in one of our one-on-ones. So this is what is sent to me on a daily basis, essentially 9 a.m. every single day. She sends me this link. And obviously, you can see this is Tuesday, June 11th. This is Monday, June 10th. This is, previous days are there. And that's how we typically are communicating and making sure that she knows what she's working on. I know what she's working on, and stuff is getting done. So that's an example of that communication, that daily sync, which whether it's done live on Zoom or in person or in that format, doesn't matter. There has to be daily communication. The other thing too is I don't see my executive assistant in person that much. A funny thing is she actually lives in the same city, but because we're in Toronto, it's not a very, let's say, driving friendly city. It takes a very long time to get from west to east. So therefore, we actually don't see each other that much. But when we do, we have a good time, right? We have fun. We've been to dance festivals, EDM, stuff like that. Anyways, it's nice to have someone you actually enjoy spending time with. And I'll come back to that in a moment. So again, you want to have a good idea, really break this down of how you want them to manage your calendar, what type of links she can or this person can provide to people, if at all, in terms of organizing things. If you have an example of, I'll just show you my calendar. I don't have a very charged calendar, but this is the stuff I've got deep work in the morning. I've got specific meetings throughout the day. I have family time at night, and then she organizes all of this stuff, right? So I don't add anything to this calendar. She owns it. And if there are certain things that are going to be labeled, they're following this type of labeling system. So I love process. I love having repeatable systems, speaking in podcast days, just trying to make her life as easy as possible. Another thing with respect to the inbox, you want to have expectations because your EA will be responding as the EA on your behalf or as you, depending on the situation. So we've got some very basic parameters around email initial response, 2 to 8 hours. All emails should be resolved within 1 to 2 days if there's a bit of back and forth. Yeah, all inbox, the whole inbox needs to be cleaned out. So we've got inbox 0. So there's never emails sitting in my inbox. They're moved into specific folders. And that's the way we operate. So if there's anything that I need to review, it's moved into my for Yuri folder, and I'll actually just quickly show you this. So you can see there's no emails in my inbox. You can see on the left-hand side, we've got review, which is There's one email from YouTube. I've got some stuff in my Yuri folder, which I have to go through. And that's it, right? So like there's a very clear process. She can handle most of the emails. If she's not sure, we review it. And the other thing too is how to respond on the CEO's behalf. Have this mapped out. If you're getting emails that are similar over and over again, when responding to pass on an investment opportunity, like I don't really invest in other things. Like I don't invest in people's companies. Like very seldomly am I even considering these conversations. So it's like, cool, this is Becca, Yuri's assistant. Got your email before he did and thought you'd appreciate a speedy reply. Thanks so much for understanding, blah, because Yuri's not interested. So I don't even need to see that. It's just off the top. When responding to pass on a potential collaboration with an unrelated product or opportunity, I get so many emails like, hey man, do you want to support this? Do you want to be an affiliate for this launch? And the answer 99.9% of the time is no. Okay. Like I don't want time thinking about it. It's just a no. I don't have time in my life to consider all these other opportunities. It's a no. So Becca takes care of that. When responding to random copywriters who are promising the world to us, hey, you're shot a 2-minute video about how you can improve opt-in rate. Want me to send it over? This is typically, what the response is going to be. So what I'm trying to get at is you're going to have emails that come through quite a bit. Figure out how you would respond to those and you just document them so your assistant can take care of that for you. The most common things, there might be 5, common types of emails that come through. Just how would you answer it? Give that to your assistant and then that person takes care of it. All right. So what you need to have in place, first and foremost, is a playbook for the role. How do you want this person to take care of your inbox? How do you want them to take care of your calendar? If you have an executive assistant who's been there and done that in the past, amazing. Maybe they can show you some of the ropes. But at the very minimum, you want to be able to show them, here's what success looks like, here's what good looks like, and make it relatively easy for them. The second thing that I would strongly recommend you consider putting together is as you can see here, in my case, it's a Yuri LKM user manual. So when you buy something and it's like, here's how this thing works, that's what I have for me. So my love languages, word of praise, physical touch, my Kolbe score, my strengths finder. So just that stuff. And then all this other stuff, like my genius zone, right? These are the things that I like. These are the only things that I want to do. We talked about the core 4, speaking on stage, shooting videos, being interviewed on podcast, like sharing a compelling vision, unifying the team toward a common goal. The only other thing I would add to this is coaching our clients. That's all, because I love doing the coaching calls as a group, strategy, growth, etc. So, and then Yuri, in a nutshell, it's very important for anyone, like to be honest, I share this with anyone who's a direct report of mine. I want them to know how I operate, right? Like I'm ambitious, self-willed, stubborn, tenacious. I'm very confident in most areas of my life. That gives me strength to always find a way to make things work. Stuff like sitting on a beach for more than a day is an early death sentence for me. I have no interest in doing that. And boredom and apathy are my fast path on happiness. Planning far into the future with vivid detail is not a strength of mine. I can generally get a sense of where things are going to look at, where I want them to go, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I know some people have an easier time with that. Yeah, just all these little nuances of who you are, right? How I communicate and work with others. I'm direct, straightforward, and uncomplicated. I'm usually very clear about what I want and usually know the quickest route to getting it. This is a big one. I'll go to the depths of the earth to love, protect, and help those who stand by my side with 100% commitment. I'm very caring and protective of loved ones. But if you cross me, you're dead, right? So I'm just being very honest. I have very high standards. I expect a lot of myself and I expect a lot of other people. And I'm just mapping all this out, okay? What I value, my weaknesses, restless, impulsive, wasteful, overzealous, provoking, great starter, not finisher. So these are my weaknesses. I can certainly strengthen them, but those are just good to know, right? I have a very low tolerance for people who don't think or otherwise are just dumb. Nepotism, laziness, entitlement, lying, cheating, looking for shortcuts, people who don't do a good job for what they were hired to do. I'm just gonna straight up say I don't like this stuff, right? So I will endlessly support those who go do not ask me to do any high detail or repetitive work, read from a script or overly prepare for a presentation. These are things that drive me crazy, right? They will suck the life out of me. And I just want my assistant to know that. So anyways, having a user manual for you can be very helpful for anyone you're working with, especially your assistant. So that's the second thing you want to have is ideally, and I've never seen anyone do this. I've shared this with our high-level clients and they're just like, can you just send me this document? Because I think everything you wrote is exactly who I am as well. I'm like, here you go, right? Modify for your own needs. But this is a game changer because when I'm hiring people in our final interview together, I'll tell them, just so you know, we're going to build something amazing together, but working with me is not easy. Like, I'm not an asshole, but I'm very direct and I will give you a tremendous amount of leeway if you do a good job. And if you don't, I'm going to we're going to have a conversation around that. You just let people know what you're all about. Don't let there be any surprises. And if they don't like what they see up front, well, don't even engage in the hiring process. So we talked about the playbook, we talked about your user manual, we talked about the communication rhythm, which is very, very important. And the fourth thing that you have to really think about is, and I alluded to this, you have to trust this person implicitly, right? You have to be able to give them your credit cards, your passports, banking information in some cases if you want, but they should be able to look after your kids without issue, okay? I'll show you one thing. I'm very particular about travel. Like, I love flying, I love being on airplanes, and I'm a bit of an aviation nerd. So when I'm booking travel for myself, I have very particular interests that I'm looking for. So if you want your travel to be taken care of, because you could waste a lot of time booking travel and points and looking for different prices and all this kind of stuff, if your assistant does this for you, I'll tell you the most powerful thing you can do is create a document. In our case, it's called Booking Travel for Guriel Came. I also have one for our family. So if Becca's booking travel for our family, here are the preferences. But I mean, you can see this, booking flights, business, for me, right? As much as possible, book with aircanada.com. However, avoid Air Canada Rouge whenever possible because Air Canada Rouge is a disaster. However, if traveling overseas, please consider options from Lufthansa, Emirates, Qatar, Etihad, Qantas. If a direct flight is only available to a destination over 5 hours away via Air Canada Rouge, then look for an alternative route that can get there with Air Canada and or a Star Alliance partner. You're thinking of, you're watching this, you're like, this guy is fucking OCD. Maybe, but here's the thing, is all of what I'm sharing here, these are decisions that are happening in my head when I'm booking my own travel. And so all I did was, okay, I just got out of my head. I said, why would I decide to, instead of flying Toronto to Rome on Air Canada Rouge, why would I go Toronto, Frankfurt, and Frankfurt to Milan or whatever? What's the decision-making process behind that? And I just document it because all a process, like an SOP, all it is it's a visual documented approach to how you think. So whether it's traveling by train, whether it's traveling by plane, document everything you can possibly think of. And it takes a moment, but guess what? I haven't even updated this in a couple of years. This is actually pre-COVID. So this needs to be updated. So as an example, I'm like, okay, well, if I travel to Barcelona, Air Canada Rouge on a 767, which is an outdated plane, its travel time 7 hours, 45 minutes. Rough cost is $2,100 in business class, but there's no lie flat seats. Well, that sucks. Possible solution, Toronto to Frankfurt on Air Canada on a 777, which has lie flats, a much better plane. And then from Frankfurt to Barcelona on an Airbus A321. Travel time is about 11 hours, so an extra 3 hours for me is acceptable here, right? Cost, however, is $8,800, so I don't necessarily know if I want to pay 4 times as much for that. So in that case, I'd rather suck it up and maybe travel Air Canada Rouge because I'm not willing to pay 4 times as much for that alternative connection. Now this is an outdated example, so I would probably need to update this a little bit. But as an example, whenever possible, book nonstop flights only. If a connection is required, ensure layover is at least 1 hour to avoid missing flights, but ideally no longer than 3. Recently, I was flying to Belfast. I had a 5-hour layover at Heathrow. Was it the end of the world? No, because the alternative was a 1-hour connection, and I'm like, I'd rather not miss the flight. So I took the 5-hour connection, I sat in the lounge, I got a bunch of work done, it was all good. For long-haul flights, choose a flight that uses one of these aircraft in this order. Ideally, 787, 747, which basically is out of service now, so it's not going to be a 747, 777, A330, 767. For shorter flights, these are the ideal aircraft. So again, even seat selection. So choose a middle row 3 through 8 to avoid the bulkhead, bathrooms, and people directly behind an economy. I'm sharing this with you because you have preferences. You have things that you look at when you're making a decision. And if you can just document this in a Google Doc and then share it with your assistant, they will have a tremendous amount of clarity to book flights for you. They will know how you would book a flight, what is your criteria, what is your decision-making process for doing this. And that's the cool thing about this is I know people who waste so much time booking travel. Like they're using points and trying to find the best routes. I'm like, dude, you're spending 10 hours a week trying to book a flight. Just map it out and have someone else do this for you, right? Unless you're a travel agent full time. So that's when I talk about trusting someone implicitly. Has stuff fallen through the cracks sometimes? Has stuff not been exactly the way I wanted it to? Yeah, maybe once or twice. But honestly, it wasn't even that big a deal. So it wasn't like we went to a different destination and missed a flight, none of that stuff. Small little things. But after the trip, I always do a debrief and I say, hey, this was great. This was a little bit, of a nuance. Just so you know, next time we're traveling to this airport, here's one thing to consider. Because sometimes we're traveling to airports that I've never been to. And therefore, you don't know what the security check-in connection process is. So it's important for me to be able to share that with Becca after it happens so that we can course correct, update this document as we need to for the next time around. So again, that communication, that back and forth is very powerful. So if you're someone who does a lot of traveling or enough traveling, I would recommend having a travel document like this where you map out all your preferences and decision-making criteria and possibly even some boundaries for how much you're willing to pay for a flight to common destinations you go to. Because if you're flying from Toronto to LA, the price is more or less going to be the same most of the time, right? So you could say, listen, I'm willing to pay this amount, but not like 5 times that amount for what if there was like surge pricing or if it was a last minute type of thing. So you can give those types of parameters so that your executive assistant can take out your credit card, pay or use points or whatever on your behalf and make those judgment calls. So I'm going to finish off by sharing 5 things to look for in an executive assistant. Number 1 is ultimately, by the way, if you're enjoying this, make sure you hit subscribe because I've got tons of other videos to help you build a great business. And I'm going to be showing more behind the scenes of how I operate, how we operate, and so forth. So again, what to look for in an executive assistant. Number 1 is someone who compliments you. If you're high level, if you're strategy, if you're not detail oriented, you ideally want to have someone who compliments you. Now, what's interesting is that Beck and I actually don't compliment each other to that level. So neither one of us is highly detail oriented. And this is the one area of opportunity for her growth is that I didn't realize this until after the fact, but it's all good, right? We've made it work. And she's also been very, very open to receiving feedback so she can focus on being more detail oriented, more process oriented, so that I don't have to be as much so. With that said, the one thing I think I appreciate the most about Becca is that she's someone who loves taking on new challenges, learning, and growing. So you want to find someone who is always willing to take on new stuff, right? Always willing to take on and learn and grow. It doesn't matter what it is. Hey, we have to buy a car in Mexico. Can you look into that? Does it make more sense to import it from Canada? Like, that wasn't in the job description. But the job description changes all the time because your life is evolving and their skill set is about adapting and learning and growing. The fun thing for them too is they will learn so much more in different areas of their life. Like the amount of stuff that Becca has learned about travel since working with me is like astronomical. Like she's grown astronomically just in that one area, right? Or in the content side or SEO or like all these amazing growth opportunities. So you want someone who's very growth oriented. 3, someone who loves taking care of others. You want someone who fundamentally enjoys taking care of you. Now, I'm not saying like, sick on a couch with a little bell, can you bring me some cough syrup? But someone who genuinely cares about, so there's this kind of nurturing, I want to take care of you type of energy. 4, someone you enjoy hanging out with. Like, as I said, like Beck and I don't hang out that much because it's a bit of a mission to see each other in person. But when we do, hey, it's great, right? We've had, team retreats and we've hung out on the beach and we've done dance festivals together. And she introduces me to her friends as like her boss. And it's like, it doesn't even feel like that. So it's really nice to have someone that, it's not a deal breaker, but if you can hang out together and enjoy spending time together, it's all awesome. especially if you're in an office together or you are going to be around them a lot, you have to be with someone that you actually want to be around. 5, and this is going to be the same for pretty much any position, is ideally, you want to have someone who has previous experience in this role. Now, in Becca's case, she actually didn't have a lot of experience as an EA before I hired her about 3 years ago now. But that was okay, because at the time, I was willing to work with someone who I could kind of grow with. And again, like, that's the only thing. It depends on where you are, right? If you're going to hire someone in any position, obviously, like, you want someone who has a lot of experience there. But, there comes a price tag with that. And, maybe you find someone who's a better fit who can grow into this role based on what you're looking for. So it's not a deal breaker, but you definitely want someone who complements you, who has a complementary skill set, who's willing to grow, who's willing to learn, who's willing to take on new challenges, and is very open to feedback and is very coachable, who's wanting to help you and make your life easier, who cares about your success as much as theirs, and ideally someone you can hang around with, because that's important as well. So that is kind of a little bit of behind the scenes of how I work with my executive assistant. If you found this helpful, let me know in the comments below. If you like these types of videos where I'm kind of going behind the scenes a little bit more and showing you some of our processes, happy to do more of these for you as well. So thank you for hanging out once again. If you have not done so already, hit subscribe, because I've got tons of other videos to help you grow a successful business. Whether you're a health professional, coach, or just entrepreneur in general who wants to kick butt in life and help a lot of people, this is the place for you. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you soon. Here are 5 business mistakes guaranteed to bankrupt your health coaching business. And I'm sharing this with you because I actually made a lot of these mistakes 20 years ago when I started my first online health business.